Hello, this is Adrian Day with another of our video highlights. If you'd like to learn more about the topic that we discussed today, you can watch the full interviews on our website at adriandayassetmanagement.com, where of course you can also find more information about our services. Sit back and I hope you enjoy. Thank you.
The people who aren't really involved in gold, everybody's saying, why didn't gold go up with the Iran war? And I think there's a misunderstanding. So let's look at briefly, let's just look at why has gold declined in the last month. Number one, it had gone up $500 in the 8 days before the war started, before the bombing started. Typically on geopolitical events, it's not at all unusual for gold to move up in advance of the event and then actually to decline once we had the event. That was the case in the Russian invasion of Ukraine, for example.
I did a brief study going back 50 years to actually the oil crisis back in 1974-5. And that, of course, takes in the very first Iran problem when, the Ayatollahs first came to power and then we had the hostage taking. It would be very, very difficult for anyone to look at that table of all the geopolitical events of the last 50 years, we're talking negative geopolitical events of the last 50 years, and show any particular correlation with gold. You have to remember that the dollar is also a safe haven asset. And so when the bombing started and the war started, the dollar went up sharply. And gold was simply reacting to the dollar, in my view. And then the third issue, which is a very important one that people don't often think about, but typically in a geopolitical event, you have a rush for liquidity. And I think it's fair to say that this time around, the rush has been a little less than a rush and perhaps a little stumble towards liquidity. But, people look for liquidity. And of course, gold, which trades 24 hours a day and is immediately liquid, is the ultimate source of liquidity. I think when the war calms down, whether it ends or it, gets into some kind of stalemate, or it just calms down in some way or another, then I think the monetary factors that have been driving gold for the last 2 or 3 years will come to take precedence again. And, the factors that drove gold for the last 2 or 3 years are still in place. We still have inflation that's stubborn in the US and Europe and around the world. We still have fiscal deficits that are out of control in most of the major economies of the world, and certainly in the US are just continuing to deteriorate.
On top of that, of course, we've had the oil price spike, which has led to increased speculation that the central banks, the Fed and other central banks, won't be cutting interest rates anytime soon. And Canada, Bank of England, Bank of Japan, Federal Reserve, in the last week have all come out saying that they're not cutting rates and maybe they're going to, in different degrees, they've implied that they might be raising rates. And that, of course, is negative for gold. If you look at the Fed dot plot,
it's monetary factors that are driving gold. That's what's fundamentally driving gold. Monetary factors, lack of trust in governments, and particularly lack of trust in fiat currencies. And that trust has been completely broken with so many currencies. People just don't trust currencies anymore. When I say, I'm very, very bullish on gold, because the main buyers of gold over the last 2-3 years, the main buyers of gold still have every reason to buy gold that they had 2 years ago. Yep. And they are largely price insensitive. And I'm not talking just about the central banks. I'm also talking, of course, about Tether. Tether, as you know, bought more gold last year than any central bank. If you look at central banks, everybody knows that they're diversifying away from the dollar in the face of concentration in a single asset. At the beginning of the century, 2001 or 2000, it was like 78% of central bank foreign reserves were in the dollar. So moving away from extreme concentration in a single asset an asset that's owned by a profligate government, which is willing to use that its dominance and its power to weaponize the dollar. Now, when you move to Tether, Tether has started the dollar stablecoin, and then recently they launched a gold stablecoin. Their plans, that doesn't mean their plans will come true, but their goal, not their plans, I should say, their expectation is that the gold-backed stablecoin will have as rapid growth in the next 5 years as the dollar stablecoin did in the last 5 years. That's pretty significant.